Now, you and I are made up of cells. We have 50 to 100 trillion cells in our body as adults, and we have over 250 different types of cells in the body as well. And so each of those cells functions kind of like a factory. And of course, a factory will produce a product. But in order for the factory to produce a product, what do you need? Well, you need raw materials. You need something that you can bring into the factory that you can work with and then produce the product with from that. And the materials, the fuel and the materials for the factory are chemicals, including things like oxygen and water and nutrients, right? Those materials are chemicals. So chemicals serve as the fuel for the factories, for the cells, and it serves as the raw materials that of what this factory is going to take and use and produce. Right? Now, how many of the cells in your body need the oxygen, water, and nutrients? Every cell that you want to keep alive. Right? Yes, every cell that you want to keep alive. So how are you going to take those things that you need and get them to every cell of the body? There has to be a vehicle. There has to be a transport mechanism. Well, that is the blood. The blood is it's the semi-truck that takes the payload of the nutrients, the chemicals, and brings it to the different cells so that they can extract it, they can take it for themselves. Now, what happens if you block the blood flow? You block the blood from being able to get to an area. It's not going to work well. Right? It's not going to work well. So in order for you to have perfect health, you need to have perfect circulation. And of course, the Bible said that the life of the flesh is in the blood. Right? The life is in the blood. Why? Because it's the blood that carries the fuel to the different parts of the body. Right? Now, if you have a machine, that machine needs fuel in order to operate. Just think of your vehicle. But it also needs electricity. It needs something, not only the fuel to maintain its function, but it needs something to start the function and get it going. And so cells need electricity as well as part of their function. They need not only the fuel, but they need the spark to get them going. And cells do function as electrical units. They take in or spit out positively and negatively charged particles. They regulate the voltage difference across the membrane. There's resistance across the membrane. These are all electrical terms. So cells function as electrical units, but they also have chemicals, so they're electrochemical in their function. Got to have the electricity, got to have the chemistry. Both of those going together in order for the cells to function. Now remember, the laws of thermodynamics tell us that all energy necessary for a system to function must come from outside of that system. So where is the cell going to get the electricity from? A normal cell in the body. Well, that's going to come from your nervous system, from your central nervous system, from the brain, the cortex of the brain. That electrical impulse is going to be generated from there. We are told that the influence of the mind on the body as well as the body on the mind should be emphasized. The electric power of the brain, promoted by mental activity, vitalizes the whole system and is thus an invaluable aid in resisting disease. Well, that's a good thing to remember. So we have that electrical activity of the brain. How is it going to get it to the different cells of the body? Well, it's through the wires, through the nerves. So the nerves are going to be carrying those impulses to the different parts of the body in order to bring the signals that are needed in order to control the function of the various different cells of the body. We're told the mind controls the whole man, yet many spend all their lives without becoming intelligent in regard to the casket, that means the body, that contains this treasure. All the physical organs are the servants of what? Of the mind. And the nerves are the messengers that transmit its orders to every part of the body, guiding the motions of the living machinery. So again, it's the mind that controls the body. It's the nerves that are the channels by which the mind gives that information to the different cells and then controls their information. I mean, their function. Now, again, all energy necessary for a system to function must come from where? outside the system. So where is the brain going to get the power from that generates the electricity that then comes to the cells? Well, you might say that it's glucose or it's the nutrients. No, 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 that's the fuel. Where does the spark come from? Because the spark's different. Where does the spark come from? I'll tell you, it comes from spiritual information. Spiritual information. You see, you and I do not just have cells that make up our body. We also have a spirit, right? And that spiritual information is brought in by the spirit. And the spirit in combination with the brain is your mind. That is where your thoughts come from. And it is your soul, which is the combination of body and spirit. It's the soul or the mind that can think, not just the spirit or not just the brain. And the spirit takes in the spiritual information. It makes that available to the cortex of the brain. When the cortex receives that, it converts its power into electrical energy, action potentials, and then that is communicated down the nerves to the different cells of the body, and those cells take in the chemicals that are released from there and bring them into themselves, and then they function and change their function accordingly. And when that happens, now you have proper function of the cells through the nervous system because of the spiritual information that's brought in. Now the question is this: what kind of spiritual information provides what the mind needs in order to control the body well? And the answer is love. It's love, and love is always truthful. So it's love, it's truth. That is the information that we need. And when that is the spiritual information that the spirit brings in and makes available to the cortex of the brain and then through the nervous system, through these pathways, then the mind can control the functions of the body the way that it's supposed to. But what happens if it's lies, if it's error, if it's selfishness that is the spiritual information that's brought in? Well, through that same pathway, it's going to result in dysfunction, because truth is always associated with function. Error is always associated with dysfunction. And so if you're bringing in error, that's going to result in dysfunction in the body. Right? Now, this is one pathway of dysfunction. It's not the only pathway of dysfunction. You can have dysfunction because of inheritance. Again, you and I have DNA that's in our body. That DNA came half of the information from father. We had half of the information from mother. That physical information comes together when we're a single cell. And that information then is used to make all of the physical structure of the body and the functions of the body possible, right? So it's the physical information that takes the physical materials, puts them together in the physical construction of the body in order for it to function the way that it's supposed to. And if you have a problem with inheritance, that problem came in a prior generation. It came to you when you were a single cell, and that dysfunctional information was then put into the 2 cells that came from that, and the 4 cells that came from that, and the 8 cells that came from that, and every cell in your body. So the defect is going to be, the defective information is going to be in every cell of your body, every cell. And if that defective information is in every cell of your body, then it must manifest itself anywhere that it's found and used. Right? So if you have blueprints, because the DNA is kind of like blueprints for making a house. Well, you don't use all of the blueprints for all of the house. You might use a certain part of the blueprints for the electrical. You use another part of the blueprints for the plumbing. You'll use another part of the blueprints for the construction of the bathroom, and another part for the bedroom, and so on, right? So, but every cell that is of the same type will use the same instructions, the same parts of the DNA, the same genes, because they're the same type of cell, so they have the same type of function. So all of the cells of a particular type will use that use that defective gene will use that defective gene and will manifest the problem. So if it's an inheritance issue, it will show up from the time they're little, and it will be seen throughout every cell of a particular type. Now, what if you have a situation where a problem arises, a disease arises in a part of that type of tissue, but not throughout all of that type of tissue? For example, let's say that somebody develops a nodule on their thyroid, and the nodule's on the right lobe of the thyroid. Is that inheritance? Can that be inheritance? Well, the answer is no, it cannot be inheritance unless on that right side of the thyroid there is a certain type of tissue that is not found in the rest of the thyroid, not found in the left side. But I'll tell you, from our understanding of the thyroid, the types of tissue are in both sides. So if you have a one-sided problem in a single organ that has the same type of tissue on both sides, it cannot be inheritance that causes that. If an individual develops cancer in one part of the colon, but the rest of the colon is okay, and then it starts growing from there, that cannot be inheritance. Can't be inheritance. Sickle cell disease, oh, that can be inheritance. It's found in every red blood cell. The problem is there. Down syndrome, trisomy 21, that's an inherited, well, it's a chromosomal problem that happened during development. It's in every cell. It's there. You can't do anything about it. Right? Now, a second cause for dysfunction is environment. And environment, your cells have to be in a certain environment of temperature and pressure and so on. And if there's too much pressure, like you going 2 miles an hour and the car going 70 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you accelerating from 2 miles an hour to 70 miles an hour on the front of the car, there's going to be some dysfunction associated with that because your cells are not meant to function under those high pressures. If you went out into outer space and didn't have a spacesuit or anything like that, well, you would die right away as well because you can't handle that low pressure. You have to have a certain amount of pressure, but not too little, not too much. And temperature as well. If it's too high, you burn yourself. If it's too low, you freeze yourself. You have dysfunction. Now, environmental causes, which we might call trauma, physical trauma never creates a new process. All it does is it destroys or damages existing structure, and therefore, since structure is necessary for function, it damages that function. So if you had a situation that came along where your arm got ripped off, I hope that never happens and you've never had that experience, but in the emergency department I've taken care of people that have had that situation. But anyways, if your arm is ripped off, well, there's definitely trauma. There's going to be dysfunction there because you know the arm's not there. But so now that's not going to be working the way that it's supposed to. And if it's taken care of and the bleeding controlled and so on, you have a healing process that's going to heal that over, but you're not growing a new arm back. Right? If the trauma is big enough that's beyond your capacity to regrow, then the result is going to be permanent, but the healing process should bring you to the place where you don't have chronic pain and chronic dysfunction associated with that. You just have a missing appendage at this point. Right? So that's environment. Now, a third cause for dysfunction is raw materials. What do I mean by raw materials? I mean chemicals. Chemicals are the raw materials that the cells use. And what happens with the raw materials? Well, chemicals, just like inheritance, chemicals are used as a part of a process, but chemicals, they can be taken up in a certain type of cell first, or depleted from a certain type of cell first, depending on how fast the cells use those chemicals. So they can manifest themselves in a certain type of tissue or certain type of cell first if there's a chemical problem or a raw materials problem. But it will show itself across all of the cells of that particular type. It shouldn't be this spot in there or that spot in there or that spot. It should be throughout it. So again, if somebody had iodine deficiency, you shouldn't see that manifesting on one side of the thyroid as opposed to the other side of the thyroid. If it's truly iodine deficiency, you're going to see that throughout all of the thyroid. Right? And you'll see it there first, and then it'll hit other parts of the body. Now, chemicals are like sand in a sandcastle. If you walk down the beach and you see a sandcastle, do you conclude that the sand made itself into a sandcastle? Well, of course not. None of us do. Right? We understand that if we see a sandcastle, someone or something used the sand in order to build the sandcastle with. So, therefore, in chemical processes in the body, if there is a localized chemical issue going on, the chemical cannot concentrate itself. Something else must do the concentrating. So let's look at that a little bit closer as we consider our next topic, which is energy.